I said, never again will I chemically straighten my hair. I put some color in my hair now, but I was doing it to achieve a straightness that I thought was necessary to maintain a particular look, to continue to be an executive in corporate America. I bring it up not to talk about hair, but to talk about the way we will literally and figuratively damage ourselves and alter ourselves
to
to
fit in
fit in
for a possibility.
for a possibility.
Hello, and welcome to Revolutionary Leadership, the bi-weekly podcast that shines a spotlight on the visionary leadership approaches Black women have cultivated for generations, yet are too often overlooked. I'm Dr. Kerry Mitchell Brown, a culture architect, racial equity strategist, and scholar of organizational change. For more than 20 years, I have helped leaders, organizations, and communities reimagine what's possible when equity and authenticity guide the way. Each episode, we'll dive deep into conversations that illuminate how Black women integrate community care, radical self-prioritization, and collective capacity building into transformative leadership practices. Together, we'll expand what leadership can look like and what liberation through leadership truly means. Because this is where Black women's stories become tomorrow's blueprints. Welcome back to Revolutionary Leadership, where Black women's stories become tomorrow's blueprint. I am Dr. Kerry Mitchell Brown, and today we have a conversation that I have been looking forward to. We are building on what we explored in episode 1. In that first episode, we talked about how Black women get trapped into two limiting archetypes, the savior and the scapegoat. We're brought in to fix everything, then blamed when decade-old problems don't magically disappear. Those archetypes show up in our advancement pathways through what we call the glass ceiling and the glass cliff. The glass ceiling, that invisible barrier keeping Black women from senior leadership, no matter how qualified we are, and the glass cliff, being recruited into crisis leadership, positioned as the savior, then becoming the scapegoat when pre-existing problems don't get fixed immediately. But here's what I know. There are leaders who navigate these dynamics brilliantly, who take bold steps, who advance strategically, who refuse to compromise their authentic selves. And one of those leaders is sitting here with me today. So let's talk about revolution, relationship building, strategic advancement, and how to take your next giant steps without getting trapped. This is going to be so good. Let me introduce today's guest, Leilani Brown, my sister friend. We have been in each other's lives for years, navigating family, career, life transitions, all of it. And she also happens to be the founder and CEO of Giant Steps, LLC, and the host of Giant Steps with Leilani Brown podcast. She is a global keynote speaker, governance expert, award-winning executive. Her career spans the Economist Group, Stride, MetLife, AIG, Star Insurance Companies. Gosh, do I need to say more? She's a 3-time author, including From Campus to Careers to Your Next Giant Reset. Featured in Newsweek, Fortune, EdTech Digest, Authority Magazine, Vice Chair of Middlebury College, board member of the Charleston Literary Festival, multiple leadership roles across nonprofit and arts organizations. So I get to have a conversation today with both personal and professional. And as a fellow podcaster, she knows exactly what it takes to create meaningful conversations. Leilani, welcome.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
I have to say, as someone who also hosts conversations, I'm excited to be on this side of the mic with you today.
I know it's very different. So we have all of the conversations. We've known each other for a long time. in a lot of different ways and perhaps unconventional ways. And we have some shared experiences that are unique to us, which we can talk about actually. But it's nice to have this type of conversation with you.
Before we dive in, let me just ask, how are you feeling today? What's present for you as we step into this conversation?
I feel great this morning. I know that we are recording this towards the end of the year. This is my last working week, client facing week. And so the next couple of days will be wrapping up the year and really a very reflective period for me and a planful period for me thinking about what's coming in the coming year. I feel great. I had a good night's sleep and I'm drinking my favorite beverage, which is a nice cup of black coffee, no sugar, no cream.
Oh, black coffee, no sugar, no
Sugar, no
cream. All
cream,
right. All
yes.
right. Well, I am fighting off a bug. So I have some ginger lemon tea, hot piping that I'm sipping on. And I am so looking forward to just diving in deep. I have some rapid fire questions that I want to ask you so our listeners can get a chance to know you like I know you. What is a giant step you personally took that challenged the trajectory of your leadership?
I think starting my own business, becoming an entrepreneur, and choosing to commit to this work versus kind of sort of doing it.
Yeah, that reminds me of the giant step I made to do the very same thing.
I was following you. I was like, "Can I do this?"
You
Yeah,
absolutely
you
can do it.
yeah, yeah.
What's one leadership habit you believe every leader should adapt before stepping into a new season or a role?
I think self-awareness, really knowing yourself so that you know what you can deliver with excellence and saying no to the rest of the distractions.
I love that principle. What's the difference between mentor and sponsor, and which matters more for advancement?
That's a good question. I have to say, because I always give credit to Carla Harris, who introduced the term to me as we know it and talk about it today. She is a good sister friend and has been a mentor for me in the past. A mentor helps you think. You can have multiple mentors. You might seek them out and they help you navigate. And a sponsor helps you move. They are identifying you, they are hitching their wagon to you as a thoroughbred and really sponsoring your moves forward. So that's how I think about the difference.
That distinction is so important and it connects to something that I developed called friend raising versus networking. So we'll explore that a little bit later. But the thing that you're saying about sponsors, that's part of it.
Absolutely. Again, a mentor helps you think, a sponsor helps you move. And you may have multiple mentors. You might likely have one sponsor
If you're lucky.
if you're lucky.
In episode one, we explored how Black women get positioned as savior who will fix everything, then get blamed when it doesn't happen. What's a common misconception emerging leaders have about reinvention, especially when they're trying to escape those limiting archetypes?
I don't think reinvention is absolutely necessary. This idea, the definition of reinvention, that you have to become something else. I think that we operate from a position of strength when we become more of ourselves. So it goes back to this idea of self awareness, knowing who you are, knowing what your superpowers are, and operating from that position of strength. We should stop trying to reinvent and become something else and wasting time versus becoming deeper, more authentic, stronger versions of our own selves.
Absolutely. I see that all the time in my consulting work. Leaders think that they have to evolve into an image that someone else believes that they are. But I really do like your insights on just fully becoming who you are. And sometimes that takes some of us longer than others.
If I could go a little bit further on this, we're getting older. And one of the concepts that I'm struggling with or thinking about personally is how far away from myself I have grown and gone, and the need and the value of returning to yourself to really examine what's important to you, how you define success, again, what you're good at, where you can deliver value. And this idea of becoming more of yourself and returning to yourself is so, so important.
I love that. Love it, love it, love it. Last one. What book, moment, or conversation most shaped how you approach leadership today?
Hmm. Almost every conversation that I have had about being yourself is critically important. I'll say that, but we sort of covered that. I find myself revisiting conversation and delivering this advice that you don't have to give the world or everybody every part of yourself. You can keep a little bit for yourself. You don't have to be exhausted. You don't have to be spent. You don't have to work yourself into a frenzy. And I think for us as women, as Black women, we find our own self worth often in our productivity, in our labor, in serving. And I love and I'm a server and I'm a giver. But I think that I'm practicing actively this idea of giving myself and serving myself and resting and moving more slowly and deliberately and intentionally. That's the advice, the conversation that I am reminded of to just keep a little bit for myself.
I love that. You know, Lonnie, it reminded me of this time when I was going through enormous transition, welcoming the twins in the world. And you asked me this important question. When are you going to start living your life like you don't have unlimited capacity?
Yes, yes, because we don't have it. We have unlimited potential in many ways, unlocked potential and more expanded potential, but we don't have unlimited capacity. And so that's why the choosing becomes really important. You know, what am I choosing to do? How am I choosing to spend my time? With whom am I choosing to spend my time? And editing, thinking about your calendar, thinking about your weekends. You know, I had this conversation a while ago when someone was saying you were invited to how many number of holiday things. It's like, well, you know, we only have 30 days in December. How many of those am I giving to everybody else? What am I doing with that? And so I think it is connected to that conversation. I remember that conversation, Carrie.
I do. I do.
Yeah.
And I ask that very same question to many of my clients. So we've touched on giant steps, habits, relationships, misconceptions, influences. Now let's go deeper because what I really want to explore with you is how leaders actually navigate these advancement pathways, especially when systems aren't designed for us.
One of the things that makes me think about is just this idea of the world telling us who we're supposed to be, as opposed to us telling the world who we
Who we
are,
are.
right? I think there's so much about what we are told about be small, quieter, or demure, or sweeter, or less direct, or people telling us that we are intimidating, as opposed to them
They're
really
scared.
being intimidated
Right.
different. And so reframing things in a way that helps you understand who you are and how the world is receiving you. And there's some practical realities to it. But I do think that there's this idea of advancing that calls us to compromise in some ways who we are.
Oh, yeah. We are definitely going to get into that. Yes, I can't wait. So, Leilani, you made some bold moves across your career, corporate to entrepreneurship, executive operations to governance, writing books, building a company, starting a podcast. I'm curious about the moments of decision. Was there ever a time when you were told, maybe explicitly, maybe subtly, that advancement will require you leaving parts of yourself behind?
Oh, yeah. Listen, I'm 54. So I've been at this for 30 plus years, so almost 35 years. And I think not only was I explicitly told in some cases, being a kid from Queens, New York, with a pretty thick New York accent at times, being out bold and outspoken, dressing a certain way, operating in a certain way, that if I continued to operate in that way, it would limit my advancement. And some of it was true. I don't need to be quick to respond to everything. So there's some refinement that happened over time. And I think that that was really, really helpful. But I think that I also kind of graduated into a workforce and a world where the cues and the rules were not as explicit, but I fell into place. I wore my hair a certain way. I wore ill-fitting suits with really broad shoulder pads.
Yeah, I remember.
I didn't wear as much color. And we can talk about hair too, because I think it's an interesting thing. I would operate and show up in a way that was me fitting into a sort of an expected norm. I bring up hair only because I think we have exhaustive conversations about hair. And I don't want Black women to feel that they are the only people with hair issues. One need not look at anything further than social media with planes full of men coming back from Turkey with hair transplant. It's not just us. Those who hold on to their hair so fiercely and in a determined way that they hold on to the comb over. So it's
Right.
not just a woman issue. It's not just a
Absolutely.
man. It's a
Toupees,
right.
all the things, right?
All of the things. So it is an identity issue. I do want to share that I had a breakthrough moment when I was still chemically straightening my hair. I had a reaction where my scalp was chemically burned. It was April 12th, 2012. I think you might remember this.
I do.
And I remember the date because I said, never again will I chemically straighten my hair. I put some color in my hair now, but I was doing it to achieve a straightness that I thought was necessary to maintain a particular look, to continue to be an executive in corporate America. I bring it up not to talk about hair, but to talk about the way we will literally and figuratively damage ourselves and alter ourselves
To
to
fit in
fit in
for a possibility,
for a possibility,
not a guarantee.
for a possibility. After I decided no longer to chemically burn my scalp and apply a toxic chemical so close to my brain, and I went through that transition period of all of my hair falling out of my head. And this is before you could work from home and you couldn't wear a hat to the office.
Right. Or any head wrap.
Right. And to have one of the executives comment to me that I'm doing something different with my hair. And I responded, well, I decided to allow my hair to be worn in the way that grows out of my head. I went with a short, curly, natural style for many years after that. And I loved my hair and myself even more and more, and still advanced in my career because I think I was operating from my strongest point. This is a sort of a new treatise that I've been thinking about relative to hair because now I'm blowing my hair out. I've been having this conversation with Jason, my wonderful stylist in New York, about the importance of hair and how that is such a metaphor for us, again, returning to ourselves.
Yes, I so remember that. And I remember doing the big chop later
Right.
that year
Yeah.
after your incident and stopped chemically straightening my hair as well. And I've been locked
Yeah.
since then. And the freedom to just
Yeah.
be is so amazing.
I mean, I think too, I want to mention this. There are going to be women younger than us. So I'll focus on Black women younger than us who cannot imagine a time when that was a workplace discussion about
Absolutely.
professional hair.
Absolutely.
I love seeing our sisters in natural, naturally curly, short afros, braids, weaves, straighten, blowouts, the pressing. I love seeing the diversity of us, the magic of our hair.
Yes.
I know that this conversation is going to fall flat because they can't remember or didn't sort of come of age at a time when it was so much part of the corporate conversation. But trust me, as much as email was new, voicemail was new, this
Right.
was new.
Natural hair in the workplace
It was new.
is new.
It was new.
Absolutely. It is new. All the
It's
hours
liberating.
that
Yeah.
would take to get ready in the morning for hair.
I do bring it up as a metaphor for authenticity and to stop twisting ourselves into boxes that causes us to be distracted from doing the other work that we can do.
You know, in episode 1, I talked about recognizing when you were being positioned in the savior role where everybody expected you to fix everything when they had you all nice and dressed up the way that they wanted you. And I developed this framework around listening for what I call danger phrases.
Mm,
Like, we've been waiting for someone like you, or this has never worked before, but maybe you can fix it. Those phrases immediately tell me that I'm being set up for a glass cliff situation. What are the red flags you listen for, and how do you recognize when the opportunity is trying to trap you, either when you were attached to an organization or even in your consultancy work?
Before you can get to the red flags, you've got to start with the right questions. I think when you're coming into any situation, whether it's a new client, new project, a new role, it starts with not having all the answers, but asking the right questions. And the first question I think we can ask is, what does success look like? And start to unpack that a little bit. What does success look like? And then probe further. Why is that your vision of success? What indicates that that's possible? How do we measure it? What would make you comfortable as we are on the road to success? What is the time frame for that same success? And
What
making
are the
sure,
resources
what are
for
the
that success?
resources for that success? Why did you hire me? What about me versus the other candidates instilled the confidence to make that decision? Sometimes we don't ask those questions because we are afraid of the answers, or we're afraid of what we know the answers to be, or we expect the answers to be.
Absolutely.
And I think those are good questions to ask.
You recognize the trap. You know when something's not aligned. Walk me through your giant steps framework. Like, what are you doing at giant steps? Because it's one of the things to know you need to make a move. It's another thing to know how to identify the right move.
So everybody can't make a move. Let's just acknowledge that. Some of us are in jobs right now. We've been looking, but in jobs and sort of seeking and out there. But I'd say that we all have a 90-day opportunity when we're new and we're fresh, because we can go, some of us, very quickly from the beloved unicorn that's going to save everything to
Absolutely.
being,
You're like,
the
what the
problem child.
hell?
Right.
Yes.
From golden child to problem child. Right. And so I think that that is very, very quick. Let's just assume that you want to create a first 90 days, or you want to leverage that newness to an organization, or leverage the newness to a client or a client engagement. And we do this in an accelerated way. And along with our collaboration team, is we try to hold the mirror up to the organization or to the challenge to help them see it. We start with a level of understanding. What I like to do is develop a diagnostic, a very specific diagnostic inquiry tool. And you can do this in your current roles if you're employed, if you're an executive somewhere. You can do this if you're coming new into a role. I suggest you do it in your first 90 days while you're still fresh and new and they still love you and they're still invested in their choice. Or you can do this with a client and you kind of write down the questions that you have. Going back to your framework, what is the core issue? How did we get here? What are the things that are important to talk about, but nobody ever does? Where are the places where we stare at the problem? And come up with that question and answer and ask multiple people. Interview as many people as you can in those first 30 days. And then aggregate all of that intake, all of that data, all of those conversations, and understand where everybody is aligned and what the outlier sentiments are. What you will generally find is that there's great agreement around there being a problem and some agreement around how it can be fixed, but there's just a lack of an actionable plan to get
Hmm.
there. I think you have to hold the mirror up, and that's what we call it. We hold the mirror up and we give a readout after that period or after that diagnostic or after that 30 days and just say, this is what you said the problem was. And in the aggregate, in summary, without attribution, here's what everybody says. Then asking a question in the group or to the group, do we agree? And by the
Right.
way, do we agree that this predated me?
Right.
And do we agree that these are the bottlenecks? And do we agree that this is the challenge? And then say, okay, we can't solve everything. We
And
can't solve,
prioritize, like,
right,
where we're going to agree on
right,
where you're going to start.
right. We can't
Absolutely.
solve resource, communication, staffing, the chairman's goddaughter who doesn't want to come to work. We can't solve 10 of these things on the list. But I recommend, and this is where your expertise comes in. I recommend we focus on these three things first. And while we acknowledge the rest of the things are important, I'm going to focus on these three things first. Then your listening has become actionable and also you're setting expectations. So we're going to focus on these three things. Do we agree that these are the most important priorities? Workshop that with your colleagues, with your boss, etc. And you say, okay, I'm going to develop a dashboard. I'm not going to forget about these things. We've agreed that we're going to focus on these three things. And I'm going to come back to you in another 30 days with a plan on how we focus on those three things. And then you're checking in along the way.
Yes.
Then you're off to a running start and everybody has some skin in the game. If you take the problem and say, I'm going to solve it,
Right. The lone warrior.
the lone warrior. And I have so much to prove about how smart I am.
Right.
And I have so much to prove about why they hired me in the first place.
And why I'm not a DEI hire or a token hire or all the things.
Because those are the traps we fall into,
We do.
trying to be the savior and to prove that we are badasses. I know I'm a badass,
Right.
but I also know that this problem is huge and it existed before I got
Before I
here,
got here. And I
right?
can't fix it alone.
I am the person that's going to drive it, but I am, if nothing, but a collaborator, a facilitator, a driver, a person who executes. But I'm going to go through a process. Like, what's your process of understanding, defining, and strategizing around the problem and bringing people along?
Right.
So you held up the mirror, you have an understanding, and then you have shared that understanding. Everybody agrees. Everybody agrees what the priority is. You've prioritized those things. Then you get setting the agenda for how you're going to go about doing that. And now you have a dashboard to check back in. Now you also have given your new colleagues and your boss to say, I've heard, I've been heard, because people are more likely to listen once they've been heard.
Yes.
And then you've given them a roadmap on how to move it along and what their parts are, where the dependencies are.
An invitation to join the journey.
Right. Now, I'm not saying that there are not systems that don't foster our success,
Absolutely.
but I do want to say that there's a way to work within systems that don't foster our success so that we can be successful.
Safe and thrive. Absolutely. Thinking of that, I think it's important to know your non-negotiables
Mhm.
in that, in systems that work for you and systems that don't work for you. How do you help leaders distinguish between their non-negotiables and their preferences?
Well, I think about your values. Honesty and integrity is a value to me. Humanity and empathy and how you treat people with
Yes.
respect. Those are, to me, non negotiables. I have promised myself, and I intend to keep the promise to leave circumstances that do not honor my humanity. I remember when we were choosing schools for my son, for Maxwell, we were able to educate him through some great schools. But and right around this time is where people start getting and hearing decisions, on schools. And they'd say, well, how did you choose? And I said this, and I think this is true for work. Go where you love and go where you are loved.
I love that.
So that need like choosing.
Yeah, it is a choice. There's something that I always keep coming back to is honoring your full humanity.
Yes.
Leadership models that ask you to compartmentalize parts of yourself are fundamentally flawed. Your cultural wisdom, our lived experience, your joy, like these are not things to minimize. They're our greatest leadership assets. When you're evaluating a giant step or coaching someone around evaluating a giant step, how do you assess whether an opportunity will let you bring your full self versus requiring you to shrink?
Understand the person's motivation for hiring you or for selecting you. Don't believe your own hype as to why. Sometimes it has very little to do about you and your skills. There are some red flags that you should look for in evaluating it. I know I'm answering this question sort of in a backward way, but a very vague scope, for example, and huge expectations. We'll know it when we see it. That's a red flag. We want to grow, want to be $1 billion company in 6 months, but we believe you're going to do it. That's a huge red flag. Just setting expectations realistically. Responsibility without authority. Huge red flag.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't choose to be there. And or we've had a hard time filling this role, or we've had a lot of turnover in this role and we can't figure out why. But they can't really say why.
Makes sense.
And or if they're walling you off from other people in the organization. So you don't have any access until you get there. By the way, you always have access. Use LinkedIn.
How powerful LinkedIn would have been.
I mean, years ago, if we had it 30 years ago, we would or Glassdoor or whatever.
Yes.
Don't
Yes.
join this. What is a giant step? It's not always about the title. I think it's about the scope of responsibility and your ability to grow, your ability to contribute and drive a set of outcomes or lead a set of outcomes and impact. I think that is very attractive. The ability to bring your best talents to the role and to operate from a place of strength and be surrounded by people who compliment you, that's a green flag.
I learned this when I was at Dartmouth. Traditional networking was not working for me. It felt performative and it felt transactional. But then I realized in a small college town, the real decisions weren't happening in conference rooms.
Mhm.
And I intuitively knew that in these large organizations, but it was so apparent here. They were happening in your living rooms. And for someone who was really private and didn't like just people that I worked with in my house, that had to change. People were gathering in homes, they were bringing their children, they were sharing meals. And if I wanted to advance, I actually had to make friends, not network contacts. And these friends were actually my sponsors.
Yes.
And so I started hosting dinners. We provided the meat. People brought their sides. Our kids would play while they talked. And we were in real relationships. We formed real relationships. We were building trust where advancement opportunities were created. Again, this is what I call friend raises versus networking. And so building that authentic connection based on mutual value and genuine relationships. So when you're making major career pivots, moving into entrepreneurship, building your board connections, growing your podcast. How did you think about those relationships, sponsorships, sponsors, friend raisings? Were you strategic, organic, or both?
I think both. It's hard to make old friends. It's hard to make old friends. In fact, it's impossible to make old friends. And most of my relationships that are deep, authentic, trusting, where I can be vulnerable, I've known for many, many years. I've had those relationships for many, many years. So that's one thing that I will throw out there. Relationships matter so much because people do business with people they like and people they trust and the people they know and people with whom they can be vulnerable and you yourself can be vulnerable and open up and say, that didn't go so well. Or I'm thinking about making this change, but these are my fears. Or I'm having a tough time personally and it's starting to affect my work. Give me some help around how I can separate it. And so I do have a close circle of deep relationships with people who understand that experience and those experiences and with whom I have a shared experience. And those take intentionality, it takes time, takes patience, it takes love,
Intimacy.
intimacy, love,
Yes. Frequency.
trust,
Yes.
frequency, availability,
Yes.
emotional availability, but also literal availability of it takes saying yes to the invitation if you trust it and being a little bit more vulnerable, saying, yes, I'll meet you for coffee. Or, yes, let's spend some time together. Let's go on a drive together. Let's share this long drive together. Let's do this commute together. Let's have our kids visit with one another while we talk. And it takes time and it's not built overnight. Now, do I have some friendships that I am developing that is new? Yes.
Yes.
For 5 years, I lived in the city and county of Charleston, South Carolina, so it's my second home now. I toggle between there and Washington, D.C., and I'm a New Yorker. I have friends, by the way, who live all over the world at this point in my life. But when I first started to develop relationships in South Carolina in particular, even though I have family there and roots there, I started to develop social and professional relationships. My decision to say yes to most invitations if I was available.
Yes. It's important. So relationships aren't just nice to have.
Yeah.
They're essential infrastructure for advancement. And then just your well-being. I mean, we need other people in our lives and we need all types of relationships, familiar and friendships, professional, all of the things.
And I'll say this too, it's not intuitive for everybody. Actually,
Absolutely, you have to work at it.
you have to
Even
work
you
at
have
it.
to work at it. Even if you're good at it, you still have to work at it.
Right. I don't think people would know this about me, but because I'm so performative as an external facing person, but I'm actually quite introverted and nerdy.
Huh.
Yes, but you'd have to know me. So you know me.
I do know. I know that
You
about you.
know me well, right? But I am actually fairly introverted and enjoy my own company. I'm bookish. I'm a podcast listener. That's how I got into podcasting. I'm very internally focused. I'm a ruminator in that way. That's one thing. Number two, I'm very private, and that can be very guarded.
Yes, that's why we get along so well. We are
Yes.
the same persons.
I am like very private in the great tradition of a lot of Black women thinkers. I don't need a lot of people all up in my business.
Right. It's my business.
It's my business. So, but I'm very private and very guarded in my personal life. I don't post everything. I'm not showing in that way. I don't allow a lot of people into my personal space. I consider my home a sanctuary. I don't allow a certain energy in my physical space. And it's like my sanctuary. There's some intentional work around saying yes and being deliberately a little bit more open and a little bit more vulnerable. That might be counterintuitive to many of us, but it works in terms of expanding your network and your relationships. You can always do it one time and then say, that didn't work for me. I didn't enjoy that person's company.
I would never get that
I'll
time
never
back.
do that again. Right. I won't be doing that again. It may not be at someone's home or in your home, but you can meet a person for a cocktail or a cup of coffee or at an event or at a museum or for a walk or for a quick chat or a get to know you and be open in that way.
This is so great, Lonnie.
You're
This has
welcome.
been
Thank
so
you.
rich. Thank you. Before we close, is there anything we haven't touched on that you want to make sure our listeners hear? Tell us about your podcast. Tell us about your company.
Absolutely. So, Giant Steps LLC is a company working at the intersection of strategy, culture, career, and education. We are right now very focused on empowering people and meeting the moment that so many people find themselves in, which is looking for new opportunities against a shifting workplace. My most recent book, which is free still as of this recording, is available online. Your Next Giant Reset, a career comeback guide, is a free 4-part framework to help structure your job search so that it can be effective, productive, and you don't burn out. And I encourage anyone that is listening or looking for a change to download it at resetguide.giantstepsllc.com. And you can find it there. You can find us at giantstepsllc.com. And I am on Threads and Instagram and LinkedIn at Leilani M. Brown.
We will have all of those links in our show notes. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. In episode 1, I talked about how Black women get trapped in these limiting roles, the savior and the scapegoat. We brought in to fix everything, positioned as heroic problem solvers, often isolated. And when decades old problems don't magically disappear, we become the scapegoats. Today, Leilani showed us what it looks like to reject those roles entirely through what I call friend raising, building authentic connections instead of transactional networks, through careful opportunity assessment. We talked today about it's not just career advice, it's about building leadership models that honor our full humanity, your cultural wisdom, your lived experience, your joy, not just your credentials. When you use the frameworks that we explored, Leilani's Giant Steps, opportunity mapping, managing your non-negotiables, that's is important. You're not just advancing, you're transforming the systems that create those glass ceilings and glass cliffs in the first place. And here's what I know from my own journey and from the leaders I work with. When we take bold steps with clarity, when we build genuine relationships that create collective capacity instead of leaving us isolated, when we thrive instead of just surviving, that's revolutionary leadership. So here's what I want you to do this week. In episode 1, I talked about recognizing when you're being positioned as a savior and scapegoat role. This week, combine that awareness with what we explored today. Before you pursue any new opportunity, ask yourself, am I being positioned as a heroic problem solver? Does this opportunity honor my full humanity? What are my non-negotiables? Write these down. Listen for the danger phrases. That's how you take giant steps without getting trapped. For organizations, audit where you're creating glass cliffs. Are you recruiting women of color into crisis leaderships without adequate support? Are your advancement pathways transparent or based on invisible relationship networks? What's one change you'll make to move from individual heroic to collective capacity building? And for emerging professionals this week, practice friend raising instead of network. Reach out to one person, not for what they can do for you, but to build genuine connection based on a mutual value, shared interest, and real relationship. Notice how different that feels. That's the foundation of strategic relationship architect. Thank you, Leilani, for this beautiful conversation. Getting to do this with my sister friend has been a gift. And if you want to continue to explore these themes, check out Leilani's work at Giant Steps LLC and listen to her podcast, Giant Steps with Leilani Brown. All the links will be in the show notes. And now for my favorite part of the show. This is where women share their experience with my teachings.
My name is Yu-Young Mei. I am a primary care physician and anti-racism champion at Asian Health Services, which is a community health center in Oakland, California. We engaged KMB Consultancy as we started pushing to become an anti-racist organization. The core challenge being how to continue focusing on what's historically been our expertise, which is issues affecting Asian American Pacific Islanders, but also expanding our focus to beyond that, especially focusing on addressing anti-Black racism. One specific example of how our partnership with KMB has helped transform our leadership culture and outcomes, after Kerry helped us do an organizational assessment, we're planning to use her report to do a workshop with managers and directors to incorporate specific, actionable, and relevant anti-racist principles into their respective departments, which is the first step we've taken to do something operational like this. One of our key challenges was the different approaches and perspectives that our staff had on what anti-racism meant to them and how important it was to them, and especially in whether or not or how much tension our staff felt in this project of focusing on anti-Black racism and focusing on anti-Asian racism. The sensitivity towards those cultural dynamics allowed us to implement our focus groups and interviews in a more focused and efficient way. For example, collecting demographic data on what department, seniority, but also what generation immigrant someone was. And in this way, uncover more important trends in the data analysis. I would say that having an insightful, perceptive partner for organizational leaders can be really key to resolve roadblocks, or at least uncover or clarify them, since some roadblocks are unrecognized or amorphous or just not named. And I would say that it's important to be flexible and keep an open mind, because you never know what is the thing that's going to move your culture forward.
Thank you for sharing your brilliance, your compassion, and your commitment to Black women, leading with power, ease, and strategy.
And until next time, lead brilliantly. This is Revolutionary Leadership.
Thank you for listening to Revolutionary Leadership. If today's conversation sparked something in you, subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and share this episode with another change maker in your life. Until next time, keep leading with purpose, joy, and revolution.